Most people don't stay broke because they lack skill. They stay broke because of patterns that they don't see. I went from sleeping on the floor of a cockroach-infested room to running a $10 million AI company and working with clients like Nike, Meta, Russell Brunson, and Cody Sanchez. And it wasn't strategy that got me here. I literally brainwashed myself to become a millionaire. In this video, I'm going to show you the exact money scripts that were capping my income and how I deliberately rewired them. Now, the AI systems that I've built to run my business today only work because I had already rewired how I think about money, time, and risk. Your mindset is the most important thing as you go into building or scaling a business in the age of AI. The first money script that I had to unlearn was the DIY trap. Now, I used to think that being responsible meant saving money wherever I could, so I'd do all my own admin, I'd chase these small refunds, I would book my own travel, and it felt like I was being disciplined and efficient and cost-effective. But if somebody had offered me $10,000 to spend an hour strategically thinking about my business, I would have taken it immediately. And yet I was regularly spending that same hour on tasks that were worth $10, $30, even $100. Millionaire entrepreneurs like Dan Martell talk about this as buying back your time as a growth strategy. And so when you consistently operate below your earning capacity, you are training your brain to think small. And that behavior then reinforces this ceiling. So founders who scale design their week around decisions that directly move more revenue. For me, that meant I first needed to assign my time an actual dollar amount. And it felt a little bit uncomfortable at first, and then it just became this no-brainer filter for how I would make decisions. So if something cost me less than my hourly rate, I would outsource it. That could be housekeeping, could be laundry, could be car service to and from airports, meal prep instead of 4 hours a week cooking. And so the point was to increase my capacity and remove those things so that I wouldn't even consider doing something if it was below my quote unquote hourly rate. Now, the way that you can apply this now is you pick an hourly rate that reflects where you're going, not where you currently are. And for me, I like to increase it every quarter so that it forces me to continue to level up. Even if it feels like, really, am I ready to increase that number? It doesn't matter. I just do it disciplined every single quarter, and I use it as a decision filter. So ask yourself right now, what is my hourly rate based on where I'm going? What did I spend time on this week that I wouldn't pay somebody else my hourly rate to do? And if I offloaded my 3 lowest leverage tasks tomorrow, what could I do at that time to actually generate more revenue? But outsourcing randomly doesn't create leverage. It actually just creates expenses. So let's talk more about how to pick what to outsource once you've come up with your number. When I started handing things off to virtual assistants and then specialists in my company and then my in-person executive assistant at our first in-person office, my revenue didn't meaningfully change. And that was because I was outsourcing randomly. And I was racking my brain trying to figure it out until I realized that not all tasks are created equal. There are 4 main categories I found that work falls into. Things you're good at that make money, things you're good at that cost money, things you're not good at that cost money, and things you're not good at that make money. So I want you to do this exercise with me right now. It's been incredibly useful and I still do this regularly. Grab a piece of paper and you're gonna draw a 2x2 grid. Label the left column good at and the right column not good at. And label the top row makes money and the bottom row costs money. Now, think through from last Sunday until this Saturday, for example, write down every recurring task, not random one-off things, but every recurring task that you did during that time into one of the 4 boxes. Don't overthink it too much, just write out as much as you can. Now, let me explain this super quick, and then we're gonna come back to make a decision on what to actually outsource. Most founders are outsourcing based on frustration and emotion. They wanna remove those things that are annoying first, but annoyance is not the thing that you wanna look at. It is actually the leverage of making that decision. Now, coming back to your piece of paper, if you're good at something and it makes you money, then it should stay with you until you can replace yourself with someone better. First, you're gonna outsource what you're not good at and that costs you money. Then outsource what you're good at, but that costs you money. And only later do you replace yourself in the revenue driving tasks, and ideally with somebody who's more capable than you. The goal is not for you to necessarily decrease your task load, but instead for you to concentrate your time into the specific activities that are going to expand revenue. And so by allowing somebody to, let's say for example, take over doing your laundry each week, which maybe you're not good at and that costs you money, you can now spend more time in the other brackets of the things that, whether you're good at or not, that actually make you money. So the question I like to ask myself each week is your highest revenue activity actually protected on your calendar? No matter what, it has to happen, even if there are a gazillion other fires burning. Or is it getting eaten by everything else and put to the bottom of your list, and then you go, oh, I didn't get to it today, I'm gonna do it tomorrow. But even when you have a decision framework, emotionally, it can be tough to actually make that call and make that decision, because leverage is going to require something really uncomfortable: risk. There was a period where I made over $100,000 in a year and I still felt financially unsafe. Now, during my first year of business, we made $100,000, and yet we somehow spent all of that on all sorts of different business expenses, and I ended up putting some expenses on my personal credit card for a little bit, and I felt so embarrassed because when I had first started my business, I had committed to myself that I wouldn't go into personal debt. And later, as I reflected on why that happened, I realized that I hadn't separated business from personal risk in my own mind. And so I would make some decisions to take risk in the business, and then I would pull back and make other decisions out of fear that personally I wasn't going to be okay financially. And so this created this awful self-sabotage loop where even though the risks I was taking in the business would have made us more revenue, I ended up being too afraid to execute on a lot of that fully and would end up pulling back, which ended up wasting a ton of time and resources, and also created whiplash in terms of the decisions and initiatives that we were constantly focused on. And what I learned was that when you feel financially exposed, your brain shifts into protection mode, and you have to optimize for preserving what you currently have, not expanding into what is possible. Morgan Housel, the author of The Psychology of Money, wrote that the highest form of wealth isn't status, it's actually control. And when you don't feel in control, growth starts to look like danger, and you try to preserve. So hiring can feel really irresponsible, investing can feel dangerous, your expansion may feel like, oh, we're not ready yet to, go in that direction, maybe later down the line. And I have watched this pattern stall 7- and 8-figure businesses. It's not just a beginner problem, but the fix isn't complicated. So what I decided to do was stash away 3 to 6 months of personal runway, money that was mine, not the business's. And once that foundation existed, then the decisions that used to feel really dangerous actually start to feel a little bit more calculated, because I felt like I had this breathing room of, oh, it's okay if we need to, make a few changes in the business as a result of this move. I will personally be okay, and therefore I can take risks that are actually going to benefit the business and everyone around me instead of just contracting out of fear. So ask yourself right now, do you have 3 to 6 months of personal runway that is completely separate from your business? And do the decisions that you've been avoiding, maybe it's hiring or investing or expanding in some way, shape, or form, only feel dangerous because you don't feel secure? And what would you do differently tomorrow if you felt completely financially safe? And once I had that stability, I had to confront something that I had avoided for years: the idea of using capital as leverage. This is the 4th money script that I had to unlearn. The idea that debt was irresponsible. When I was starting my business, a close friend introduced me to Dave Ramsey's ideas. I watched him literally cut up his credit cards and use cash for everything, so he only spent exactly what he had budgeted at the beginning of the month. Now, I admired the guy, and so I followed his lead without digging deeper. It just made sense at the time, and it felt responsible. So I carried that framework for a couple of years without ever questioning whether it really applied to somebody who was trying to build a company. And so after I had a little of a personal debt stint, like I said, during the first year of business, I then paid that off. And from there on, for a couple of years, I completely avoided credit cards, I avoided loans, and it just felt disciplined. But what I eventually learned and realized was that avoidance can look like discipline and still be fear. Behavioral economists call this loss aversion. We feel the pain of loss more intensely than the reward of gain. And when that bias runs unchecked, we tend to overcorrect and we try to eliminate risk entirely. And in doing so, we eliminate potential leverage in business. Now, I'm not talking about reckless spending, more so a strategic capital plan with a defined return. Once I had stability, I started to finally see capital as a tool for acceleration. So about 2 years ago, I made the decision to open up a line of credit for the business, not because we were struggling, but because I could see that the next 36 months, we were going to have a lot of growth. We needed to hire ahead of revenue. We needed to invest in learning and move fast on opportunities that wouldn't wait for this perfect condition timing. And so immediately after we got it, an opportunity came up to invest in a strategic service that would would cost us $100,000. And we had the cash, but at the time we were also paying for high-level recruiters, we were onboarding a lot of new talent, investing in marketing, all sorts of different things, and I didn't want to pull away from those commitments, so I used the line of credit instead. And the ROI wasn't instant from that, which is why a line of credit was great. This wasn't running ads and like seeing the returns the next day, so it took closer to 12 months to really materialize. But once it did, that investment touched every department in the business, and it helped us lead toward the vision that we're building for the next several years. Now, if I hadn't had that line of credit, I likely would have passed and I wouldn't have been able to expand and get the support and growth and planning that that service ended up offering us. So TLDR, before using capital as leverage, ask yourself 3 questions. Is the return measurable? Is the execution within my control? And do I have the runway to absorb short-term volatility? And if the answer is yes, then it probably makes sense for you to leverage that capital to scale. Yet, even after I had built systems and leverage and stability and access to capital, something else was still holding me back. And I've seen this same limiting belief in many other business owners. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your standards are the problem. You can sharpen your tactics and build new skills and optimize every system in your business, but your income eventually reflects the standard that you're willing to live at. For a long time, I thought that scaling was about strategy and the tactics, but every time I approached a new revenue level, something subtle would happen. I hesitated. For years, my business partner, who also happens to be my husband, Kyle, and I operated without crystal clear ownership between our roles. There was a little bit of overlap in some areas and real gaps in others, and the business was growing, but we kept hitting similar ceilings as we got to each revenue stage. And I eventually had to face the fact that I needed to bring in a couple of other roles, one being a head of operations, and I needed a recruiter to help me find one. Now, this recruiter was different from anyone that I had ever worked with before. They were more experienced, they were super specialized, and therefore extremely expensive. And so I paid them 11 times more money than I had ever paid any other recruiter. And it was relative to every hire I had made before, a massive investment. So I felt the weight of that. But I also knew I had no other choice and I was ready to do this properly. The business couldn't scale without having strong leaders, and I knew it was going to be difficult and take much, much longer for me to find them on my own for these specific roles. And I'm so glad that I did it. Like, looking back, that was such a pivotal moment for me because that recruiter has now placed some of the most talented people in my company. And I have paid them now hundreds of thousands of dollars because every single time they delivered. Now, what I regret is how long I waited. I had the money, I had the need, I just didn't have the identity yet of somebody who spends on that level of talent without flinching. And ultimately, I was just too comfortable at a certain level. And every time growth asked me to go further, something was quietly pulling me back. And now whenever I feel those moments, I think of John C. Maxwell's quote where he says, "A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." You can't lead a business to a level that you don't believe you belong in. So I want to leave you with this. If you want to rewire your income ceiling, identify the belief quietly limiting your decisions, trace where it actually formed, choose a replacement belief intentionally, and take one action this week that reflects the level you want to operate at. I have this list literally right here, and on it, one thing that I want to make sure I do every single day is a hard thing and a scary thing. And that I spent 50% of my day on revenue generating activities, amongst other things. And just even having that one hard thing, one scary thing on there is a great reminder for myself. A hard thing might be a hard workout or a hard discussion that I need to have with somebody. And the scary thing can be a way to continue to expand outside of my comfort zone every single day. And ideally, those things become bigger and bigger scary things over time. Thanks for watching. I hope you got a ton of value out of this video, and I'll see you in the next one. By the way, here's another one that you might like.